Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And today I'm going to be making some gluten-free noodles. This is from a recipe I developed on my own, but also by looking at other recipes and doing some comparison and a little bit of research. Now, just for starters, understand I am not gluten-free. We're just not gluten-free here. However, I do occasionally like to find ways to develop recipes to help other people who have gluten intolerance issues to be able to find something that they can use as a replacement. And the first thing I want to talk about is the xanthan gum. There's a lot of controversy on the xanthan gum, and to be honest, I think that anything that starts with an X is just kind of a funny little thing about me. I just am always skeptical about. However, looking into this, the best I can find is as long as you limit how much you're using it, it should be fine. But you really need to take into consideration that it can have a little bit of effect on the beneficial bacteria in your gut. And there's a few other things. You may want to look into it for yourself. I recommend going to check out Dr. Josh Axe. On his webpage, he has a pretty good article about it, and I will link to it below. Please remind me if I forget to link to it in the description box. But that will kind of help you weigh out how important it is to use the xanthan gum. But if you are gluten intolerant and you cannot have gluten at all and you would like to have noodles now and then, I recommend doing this. Because now what I tried to do, I did try whipping up a couple of batches, not using the xanthan gum and using something like flaxseed. I made a gel from flaxseed and tried that. It just doesn't hold the same way as the xanthan gum, unfortunately. And also I tried doing an egg-free version of the gluten-free, and again had the same issues. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible, so hopefully this best recipe I'm sharing with you, if you're vegan or you can't have eggs and you want a substitute, hopefully this can give you a starting point, and then you can take it and play with it as you want. Now, I also tried to use the flaxseed gel that I made. I just ground up some flaxseed and cooked them a little bit in some rainwater as an egg replacement, and still it just wasn't the same. I even tried using it as half an egg replacement, and it still wasn't the same. And that was also a recipe I left the xanthan gum out of, and it just didn't have the same results as the successful recipe I came up with. Now, let me get to that and I'll show you the other ingredients I'll be using. I'll be using some potato starch. You could also try using tapioca starch or arrowroot powder. These are really good options. When I tried those in the noodles, I really didn't care for the flavor. Even though they're flavorless, I decided I wanted to try something else because the flavor was kind of ugh. And the other thing that I think really helped with the flavor was using the buckwheat flour and then also some rice flour. So let me get started and I'll show you what I've got for ratios. Oh, and then also I will be using eggs and some olive oil. I finally got some olive oil, finally remembered. So what I'm starting with is I want a full cup. I'm just going to do a full cup altogether of my flours. So I'm going to use a 1/4 cup of the rice flour. I'm going to use 2 1/4 cups of the buckwheat flour because I really like the flavor of buckwheat. That's my personal preference. And then another 1/4 cup of the potato starch. So to that I'm going to add, let's see, I'm going to add a tablespoon of the xanthan gum. Okay, and you can see I'm already kind of forming a well here. This is going to be for my eggs and my oil. And I want to really bring it out wide because I'm going to be using more egg in this than I did in my other noodle recipes. And if you haven't seen my other noodle recipes, I'll go ahead and link to my very first one. I'll put right up here. That one's just a standard egg one, but I also have a vegan one without the eggs. So 3 eggs. Now you can choose to add like maybe a 1/2 teaspoon of salt to this, Or you can just make sure you boil it in salted water. And then I'm going to do about a tablespoon of some olive oil in there, and that will also add a nice flavor to your noodles. Okay, and so now I'm just going to start blending these eggs. And the wider you make that, you spread that flour out, the better result you're going to have to keep the egg from running out all over onto the counter. But you could also do this in a bowl if you want to, and then just turn the dough out onto your board or however you want to do it. Your board's going to get dirty anyway, so by mixing it right here, that's just one less dish to worry about. Then little by little, you're going to start working your flour into the egg mixture. Just keep coming out there and working it in. So the high egg content I find to be best for getting these noodles to hold together. Okay, once it gets to the point that you can't really mix it with a fork anymore, just take your hands and start pushing the dough together. And then little by little you can start to knead it. Now, if you're feeling like, what I like to do is take some of this, if it starts to feel like it's coming together nicely, I'll push this excess flour and stuff off to the side. And then just kind of start working it in there a little at a time. So I don't end up with too dry of a dough, because that's really important. And then you kind of bring it in as you're kneading it if this dough starts getting sticky. Now, one thing I found about this dough is you don't want it to get too dry, because if it gets too dry, it's definitely not going to roll out good for you. Okay, so then you'll want to break your dough up into smaller amounts. I found with this gluten-free dough, working with the smallest amount as possible is your best option. Okay, so you want to get it into kind of form maybe a disc. You can make it kind of square, but here's the other thing I found about working with this dough is that before you start putting it through your laminator, you're going to want it fairly thin to start with. You can't put it in real thick. You want to make sure this is set on 1, and you're going to just start rolling it through there. And it's going to get sticky as you do this. And then you're going to need to fold it and roll it again. You're going to need to do this several times. I found it much more difficult getting a smooth result with this dough than I did using the regular wheat dough and the semola flour. Okay, so you may have to fold it and roll it a few times, and you're still going to have issues having it be straight on the edge. What you decide to do with that is going to be completely up to you. You can cut those edges off before you put it through the noodle making part, the noodle cutter. I don't. I just use all the pieces. You'll have some funny pieces that'll cut off there, and I just use them all. So it's going to be dependent on how important it is for you. I'm moving up to 4 now, to have your noodles all be perfect. Now, the thing with this, because your dough is going to be far more delicate, is the highest, the thinnest you want to go is on the number 5. And even then, it can be a little... it can be a little tricky. It gets pretty delicate when rolling it, but it cooks up beautifully. So now that's as thin as I want to go. Let me put a little flour on here just to make sure that they don't stick together when I run them through the noodle cutter. Okay, and now I'm going to put it through the cutter for the fettuccine noodles. You don't want to do spaghetti with these. You can try. It's just, you got to keep in mind, these are going to be far more delicate. Okay, so I'm going to continue on and keep making these noodles, but I got to tell you, I want to be real honest with you right off the bat, that you may get a little frustrated. When I was doing the wheat ones, I could use much bigger chunks of dough, but I'm finding with this doing smaller batches, and I don't know if you noticed here, I actually broke the dough up into more pieces because it just is so much easier to work with small pieces. If you try to do bigger pieces, you're just gonna get very frustrated and you may end up in tears. Okay, so now as I'm working on this last piece here, I had to fold this one quite a bit of times. Now, one of the things that happened is I've been getting, while I've been trying to shoot this video and make these noodles, I've had several interruptions, which has caused my dough to have to sit a little too long, and it started drying out, so it's becoming more difficult to work with. So that's something else, is you want to finish the job while you got it started. Just keep going. And also, I can almost guarantee that as you're first starting to work with this, you're going to get really frustrated because it's getting it to hold together and to not be too rough on the edges. I did have a couple pieces come out real nice where I had pretty nice smooth edges, but it took a lot of work to get it that way. It took a lot of folding and re-rolling on the #1 setting of the laminator before I could finally move on to the next step. And then you may think you're doing really good, and then you go and do it on one of the higher settings, and then all of a sudden you realize you're going to have to go back and start all over. So I have yet to try making these type of noodles, rolling them out by hand. I just really like using the laminator. And again, don't give up on it. Just keep folding and rolling and folding and rolling, and eventually you should start getting a nice smooth rectangle that you can start working with. And this is only my second time making these particular noodles, and I know with time and more practice I'll get better at getting a smoother quality out of them, because it's clear that it is possible. And so, as frustrating as it may be at first, just keep trying and don't give up. Let me finish this off by talking about some of these things. So if you don't have a pasta maker, I was blessed enough to be able to find this at a garage sale for only $3, and this one is all stainless steel. It is the Mercato Atlas. Now, I'm not sure if they still, this is clearly an older model, you can tell by the handle. I don't know if they still make them in this all stainless steel. I couldn't find one on Amazon. The one I found was chrome, but they also have these really beautiful enameled ones of different colors, and I'm going to link to that one below, because you can go in there and find red, green, blue, any color that you want. Looks like a lot of them would match. If you're into KitchenAids and you have a KitchenAid mixer and a special color, I think you could probably find one of these to match that in the color. So then another thing is that I can link below are some of these other ingredients, and that is the Anthony's Organic Potato Starch, the Anthony's Organic Buckwheat Flour. I really like this brand. I've been purchasing quite a bit of their different things. And then I'll go ahead and link to the xanthan gum if you think you want to give that a try. I really personally think it's, from just what I've worked with so far, it's working best to get a better noodle that really holds together when you roll it out. And then the Kirkland Organic Extra Virgin Olive Oil. I just ordered it from Costco online because we don't have a Costco too close to us. We have to drive all the way into town, and we don't do that very often. So I actually order quite a bit of stuff online, and it's usually here in 2 days. And so that's a really great deal to do it that way. And this is the best olive oil I've ever used so far. So I'm really happy with that. Now, in case you didn't see, what I've got going on here with the noodles is, this is my finished product. I've got a little pile down here. These are all the little short end pieces that were from the edges of the pasta as I was putting it through the cutter. And so I just piled them down there, and I'll just throw them into the pot with the rest of the noodles because I'm not concerned. This is just for us. I'm not concerned about how it all looks at the end. But if you're making a fancy meal, you know, for company and you don't want any ragged looking pieces, take these noodles and just save them for yourself and cook them up, put them in the refrigerator. I say use like a glass lock container or the, you know, with the snap. I'll go ahead and link to those below. I love the glass lock containers. And then just cook them for yourself at another time. When you go to boil them, do you want just a little bit of salt in the water and then get the water really hot, put them in the pot. You can just let them dry for maybe just a couple of hours at the most, and they will cook up beautifully like that. You don't have to let them fully dry. They will cook up really nice. I haven't yet tried putting them right in the pot, freshly made, but typically letting noodles dry for a little bit. It does seem seem like they boil up better and they just have a better finished product at the end. Otherwise, they can get a little bit mushy. So depending on how dry the noodle is, it'll take somewhere between 5 to 15 minutes for it to cook. These are cut thicker, so they are going to take a little bit longer for them to cook fully. But I was very happy with the taste. I believe the choice of the buckwheat flour was what helped give it a nice flavor. Now you can use just the rice flour combined with like potato starch or something else. When I tried doing that, I just didn't care for the flavor. It just had no depth to it. And so I think the buckwheat flour just gave it a good flavor. So even if you're not gluten-free, you surely have family or friends that are, and here's a good option for you if you want to make up a meal, maybe some chicken fettuccine or something, and you can make some gluten-free noodles to go with it. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this video and that you learned something new. Thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.